Stand by for action.
Drop your guns, everyone. And remember, I mean business.
What's your name, boy?
Joe 90.
An unusual name. What are you doing here?
I'm an agent for the World Intelligence Network.
Satisfactory. Most satisfactory.
Look, there are 600 people up there with about 40 minutes to live. Now, you can't help them, but I believe we can. Now, what's it gonna be?
It would seem that this Captain Scarlet is now indestructible. This presents us with the clear and exciting expectation that he will become our greatest asset in the fight against the Mist-Rounds.
If anything else goes wrong, I want you to be ready to act immediately.
Now, that was no ordinary breakdown. We've got to get up there and help them, but fast.
Thunderbirds are go.
Anything can happen in the next half hour.
Welcome back to Puppets Go Boom!
Boom!
My name is Aaron.
My name is Patricia.
And today we're going to talk about Thunderbirds, finally. And so we've been through what it basically was like, I would say the experimental, shows. I guess you could say that were brought out by Supermarionation and AP Films. And so now, finally, we aim at the one that basically put them on the map. The one that turned them from AP Films to Century 21 Films. And so we are going to talk about Thunderbirds. Yeah. And so, given my own personal experience of Thunderbirds, I mean, they did... What it was is this show first started off in the 1960s, and so it was the idea is that Jeff Tracy is the father of like all these sons, and he forms his own rescue outfit called International Rescue, and so he has basically spent his entire time making millions, becoming a world famous astronaut, and so he then took that, he then basically went into hiding, and then he's basically created all these Thunderbird machines. So Thunderbird 1 is like the initial craft that goes out to see what damage has basically been done. Thunderbird 2 then brings the rescue equipment that comes in. Thunderbird 3 is a spaceship that is able to come down and go back up, without any mess being left or any debris or anything left out like that. And Thunderbird 4 is the marine craft that gets released by Thunderbird 2 to basically do aquatic operations. And Thunderbird 5 is the space station that monitors all the communications going out. And Thunderbird 5 is effectively the first craft that's brought into to action to receive the rescue call from whoever is going around in the world. So we're going to talk about this incredible show, and we're going to go through all the characters as we go along. So the first debut episode we get is when they finally first start operations, and so the crisis of the day that is that they have this atomic air jet that I forget what the name is called. The Fireflash is being sabotaged in many ways, and people can't understand what is going on. And it is we are basically introduced to also our villain as well, which is known as the Hood. The Hood is a guy who can hypnotize people with his yellow eyes, and he can also take on various disguises as well, which he does throughout the show. And he's trying to get the plans for international rescue, and it's not really originally kind of like seen why he wants to do this, but then it turns out that later on in the show we're introduced to General X, who it's just we don't know where this general is from. He's just seen behind this chair who a la like, Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget. And so we find out later on that he's got these motivations to basically get the plans for international rescue because he wants to sell it to the highest bidder, which at one point ends up being General X. Putting the Hood aside, the Hood isn't like the main focus, like, or the main villain for like everything that goes wrong. Some of them are basically just natural disasters or just, man-made disasters that are either done by the Navy, for example, like, when they actually blew up that gas, natural gas seam underneath the sea, and then there's just like other unfortunate events that basically just happen, like a space a space station that's been blown out of the sky, and then he's like hurtling towards the Earth, and Thunderbird 3 is called into action. Those types of things. So it's the one thing I would say is that it is a fantastic show, and it really the great thing about it is that it's not just the story, and it's not just the characters, and it's not just that. It's the fact they're able to take these marionettes, these puppets, and able to make you feel for them, actually be able to make you root for them, actually be able to do some really hilarious things with them, which I think is really great. And also it's just the fact that they're able to take these incredible machines and these crafts that's basically just like ethics models effectively, and make you believe that they're real in some way. I think there was some fantastic artistry that went into all of this, and I really urge everyone to watch the documentary and read up on how they did it, and I think it's fantastic a piece of work. And Thunderbirds now is ingrained so much in British culture that there's models around the place. There's lots of Thunderbirds memorabilia that's is around as well. And I don't think there's one person I think has a bad thing to say about Thunderbirds here in the United Kingdom. At least I like to think so anyway.
Yeah, and also it's influenced so many people from not only just Britain but from all over the world. Everybody from Shigeru Miyamoto to Nick Park to a whole bunch of people were able to take their influences from Thunderbirds. I mean, whenever that you see, people going inside a chute and, heading over towards a rocket, or whenever you see glowing eyes on pictures, or whenever that you see, marionettes being able to perform these crazy over the top things involving with action and explosions, you think of Thunderbirds. I mean, yeah, even, Trey Parker and Matt Stone were influenced by the presentation of Thunderbirds that they made Team America World Police. So yeah, I mean, even in America, we had gotten a little bit of our influences from Thunderbirds as well, even though that, on the surface, it's like, oh yeah, the puppets, explosions, and, riding in all these kind of cool little things, but there's a lot more to it than you think.
Exactly, yeah, and I think it's one of those shows where you have to watch it to really believe it, and I think, the amount of work that went into this, we again, going back to the documentary, you see, this was there was a dedicated workshop for doing all the models and doing all the puppetry, and the studio space that they had to use. They had to have people on rafters above on the ceiling to pull this all off, and with monitors showing exactly everything that's kind of going on, and that you could hear all the difficulties of what they had to do in order, and what they had to put up with. Because keep this in mind, this was the 60s. They don't have the technology that we have today, where you can have LED panels just to show you everything that's going on there. And it was, if anything, the one thing that you and I found very interesting, I think, about Thunderbirds is that you saw about how they do the puppetry and how they had the monitors and everything like that. Do you think that maybe that may have been inspiration by Jim Henson to do some of the things that he did with the Muppets in future? It makes you wonder if he took any inspiration from AP Films or Thunderbirds or any of the marionettes.
I'm not sure, actually.
Yeah, it was interesting going through the documentaries, and it was interesting going through how all the technology was put together and everything, and you could see little bits of it. Hey, I could see different people taking inspiration from Thunderbirds, and it being such a cultural phenomenon. You see it all in Wallace and Gromit, and you see it all in other parodies, that take place in in other entertainment media. I think Thunderbirds is very ingrained in British culture. I'll just safely say that.
Yeah, and as mentioned earlier, Shigeru Miyamoto was a huge fan of Thunderbirds when he was younger. In fact, that's where we got Star Fox from.
Exactly, yeah. So this actually takes place. The premise is it takes place between 2065 and 2067. So I think it'd be kind of funny if me and Patricia will come back in 2065 and 2067 to see how Thunderbirds kind of holds up. I hope it's not another Back to the Future situation.
Oh God, but yeah, I mean, even just by watching it, it just definitely feels like this is definitely the 1960s. It's but you have the the fashion, you have like the way that people were able to smoke inside of like hotels.
The one thing I warn everybody, that it is a very dated show. It really is.
Not only due to that, but also very similar to Father Ted and Faulty Towers, there are some pretty uncomfortable depictions of stereotypical things and cultures.
Yeah, but I mean, you've got to give some forgiveness, I think, in this show about where the 60s were at the time, and because I think the Thunderbirds was happening like during the civil rights movement, wasn't it?
Yes.
Like that's crazy to think about for a minute. And there was the one thing that was also quite interesting as well, is that Thunderbirds, when it first launched here in the UK, I mean, everyone was seeing it in black and white, while in America they were seeing it in color.
Yeah,
like that in itself was quite striking to learn about.
Yeah, but here's the thing: it's not the first one that made it into color. I think technically it was Stingray that made it into color.
It was Stingray that made it into color, yeah, and but I think the idea that other people had different experiences, depending on where you were in the world, I think that was sort of something. Also, and keep in mind, Thunderbirds was also pretty big in Japan as well.
Yes, it was.
And you had Godzilla, and you had all like the monster shows and movies and things like that. But then Thunderbirds came in, and this was like radically different, and so if anything, I think he also gave a bit of inspiration for Power Rangers as well. In some ways.
Yeah, you have the Super Sentai stuff.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
And I'm sure that a lot of other mecha anime was probably inspired by it. I mean, we don't know.
Oh, you're going. I could see a lot of people who are into mecha anime getting into Thunderbirds. I really could.
Oh yeah, for sure, because they have a lot of really interesting technology and all of the different types of vehicles that they got to ride around in. It's actually really cool. I mean, it's like Thunderbird 1 is a rocket, and Thunderbird 2 carries all the equipment. Thunderbird 3 is a space rocket that can go up into space, and Thunderbird 4 is a submarine, and Thunderbird 5 is a space station. It's like, yeah, I mean, all this stuff would be really cool, and apparently even back in the 60s, the toys were hugely popular.
Oh yeah, the toys were incredible. And also when it had its revival pretty much in 1991 when it re-aired on the BBC television. That was it. A lot more stuff started coming out for it. I remember there being Pizza Hut commercials for Thunderbirds as well. It was Thunderbirds took off at that point, and it didn't surprise me. I mean, later on that somewhere down the line we will talk about the 2004 movie, but but before then, it doesn't surprise me that eventually that would go into that. But then also there will also be the CGI revival as well, which somewhere down the line we probably will get into, but probably just not now.
And there's also the 1980s anime, so we'll probably get into that at some point.
Oh, maybe we'll get into that at some point as well. But so I mean, focusing just on Thunderbirds. So I mean, you've got Jeff Tracy, you've got Scott, Virgil, Alan, Gordon, and John, his sons, and it's amazing how they have this family dynamic in it as well, because that's I think what makes the show quite interesting, because you've got and not just that, you've also got you got Tintin and you got Kiranu, who's Tintin's father, and you got other family dynamics that are also going into it as well. And it's kind of sad that the one thing I will say is that this show should have gone on for a lot longer, but sadly it was only 26 episodes, 20-ish episodes in season 1, and then only another 6 episodes in season 2, and then after that it was sadly cancelled. And but it makes you wonder, with all the characters that we had, and don't get me wrong, in this show you do get to see the family dynamic, and you get to see a little bit of razzing with Alan Tracy, who's kind of like the runt of the litter, if you will, and because he has a very he's very smitten with Tintin in that, and so it's a bit you get to see all these relationship dynamics that are also taking place on Tracy Island, along with all the rescuing that's currently going on as well, and also the relationship also with other side characters as well. We get to see Lady Penelope, who is there's just a very very fashionable young woman who is you think will basically just be living the high life as a duchess in London. No, she's dedicated herself to service by being an agent for international rescue.
Yeah, and alongside with her butler Parker, who was a former thief.
I love Parker.
Yeah, he's such a great character.
Oh my god! Like he's a reformed character. You think he's turned his life around, but then you see like evidence of he's not really left his old ways really. Like the most hilarious scene I think that Parker had was that he said, "Oh, I'm just gonna go off to Monte Carlo to do some play some casino," and then his suitcase opens up and there's all these tools to break into things. And then there's the moment when he's trying to stop his lordship going from back from Lady Penelope's house to London, and he takes a bow and these wire cutters come out of his pocket, and he just doing some pruning, and he's hilarious, Parker. I absolutely love him. And but then you've got Jeff Tracy, who is he is the father figure of everything that's going on. But the one thing is, I love the episode where they try to convince him to take a holiday, and he's just so stubborn not to do it because he feels like he's needed on the island the entire time, and it's just hilarious, going through all his family saying, "Well, I'm needed here." Doesn't everyone think I should probably stay here for a bit? And everyone's starting to kind of yeah, you should probably take a holiday for a little while and let people take one. You got Scott Tracy, who is the eldest son, and obviously he's pretty much the first responder of that. He's got to think on his feet, and the one thing I think I like Scott. Of all the people I liked on in International Rescue, I think Scott's probably my favorite character.
Okay.
I have to say, and because he sees quite a lot of the action, he's there fore and front and center, pretty much with everything that's going on. He's at one point he gets shot down in the middle of the desert, and he has to fend for himself for a while, and you get to see that if he was in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, he definitely would be Leonardo of the group.
Absolutely.
Or if depending on which variation of TMNT, he'd also be Raphael as well if he's the leader.
Well, still Raphael would be a hothead even if he was the leader in some of the incarnations.
Oh, yeah, I guess so. And I think, mind you, if you want to go on hotheads, I think Alan Tracy obviously has to be that because he's just so easy to irritate. And
he is the youngest in the family.
He is, yeah, but I think that, doesn't it? I don't think it's necessarily him being the youngest, which I think basically makes him the hothead, if you will. I think it's the fact that he loves danger and he just loves to be going 1,000 miles an hour. And, you get to see that, when he's doing the races or he's doing Daredevil stuff, and he just seems to be so hyper about wanting to get into the action and wanting to be. I'm not seeing the newer versions of Thunderbirds, so I don't know what he's in the other variations of the show. But in this, you can tell that he's so desperate to get out and be a go-getter, and I love that in him. And it's just, but the one folly that he has is that he gets wound up about his relationship with Tintin, and he gets wound up about not being able to do stuff, and from again, I'll have to rewatch Thunderbirds Are Go. I did see Thunderbirds Are Go, by the way. One of the very few people who did, and so. But it's been a while since I've seen it. But I do remember, Alan being being one of the forefronts of that movie. So I'm looking forward to seeing him in that role again. So.
Yeah, and we also have the other brothers too. So the second oldest is Virgil, and he controls Thunderbird 2, and he's a piano player, he's an artist, and he loves to read. He's very grounded, and
he's very methodical. That's one thing I noticed that, and also he's very creative in things that he does. And that's what I'm not too surprised at one point that Jeff Tracy put him in charge of saying, oh look, if things go down, I expect you to to think on your feet, and he realizes that Virgil has a creative side to him.
Yeah,
and he's able to think on his feet, and a lot like Scott in a way, but I think he's a bit more reserved than Scott is. I think that he'll take a step back and say, because he's obviously gets an opportunity to think things a bit more about what we need to do, what pod we need to use, how we should probably go about it, and he takes instruction from Scott. I think so. But while Virgil, I think has his strengths. I think I think he's a lot more thinks a lot more about what's going on compared to Scott, where he basically just he quickly analyze the situation and throw that to Virgil, who can basically do the thinking process. It's the one thing I like about Thunderbirds is that this is a great process that they do. They have Scott who is able to analyze the situation very quickly about what's going on in there, and then you have Virgil who's able to say, okay, this is the situation that we have, and this is the machinery that we should use, and this is how we should basically go about it. He's got more chance to think, and he has brains also to kind of fall back with, and also has Alan also as well, for an extra helping pair of hands. can. So like he's a lot more central to like the rescue itself in whatever episode that we go in. I think that's what Virgil has in his strengths, and I really love that.
Yeah,
and the team effort is fantastic. I think,
absolutely.
In this show.
And you have the third brother who is it John or Gordon?
It's Gordon.
All right.
Well, I mean, really, that's interesting because, like, if you have to have a hierarchy of like all of them, like, again, I don't know exactly who is who, but I mean, like, you have Scott, who's the first. You have Virgil, who's next. You have, obviously Alan is the youngest out of the lot of them. You then have Gordon, and you have John after that. And so, I mean, where they go in the pecking order. I mean, if you had to, like, I hate playing favorites amongst brothers, but I mean, like, if we had to do it just for the sake of this show, I would say Scott, you'd have Virgil, and then you probably would have maybe I would say Gordon after that, John after that, and then Alan at the bottom. Like, in regards to how old. I mean, again, I don't know what the age. I keep forgetting what the ages are of all the characters.
Okay, then.
But I think that's. I think in regards to the hierarchy, I think that's sort of how it works. I could be wrong. I'll look back on this and probably have to put like a note in the comments. But I think, in regards to like, but anyway, regardless of what order you put them all in, they're all important in their own different ways. I mean, like, you have Jeff Tracy, who is he is the most experienced out of a lot of them because, he's an astronaut. He's basically seen danger. He's like, done, a lot of things in his life. He's been a multimillionaire out of all of it. And then you've got Scott, who, is able to do first response. You've got Virgil, who's able to like think about everything that's going on. By the way, if you're kind of confused about why, Virgil sounds different, like, from seasons 1 to season 2, he's played by David Holliday in the first series, in the first season, and he's played by Jeremy Wilkin in the second season.
Okay.
Just to let you know.
Thunderbird 1, Virgil here. Landed at rescue zone. What's the next move?
I'm on my way over. Tell Brains to stand by. This is a tough one.
Right.
Gordon, Alan isn't through yet, and we're dangerously near the ground. Play out more cable. I'm coming alongside 0X.
Okay, Virgil.
And then you've got, Alan, who is like, he's not afraid of danger. He will blast himself into space. He will, like, race a car as fast as he can. He will, go in front of an alligator and, to the point where, he will, like, fall off his scooter and, like, he be putting himself in a huge amount of danger and everything like that. He's not afraid of danger. He is a daredevil, and, like, he gets very, hot under the collar. Then you got Gordon Tracy, who, he specializes in aquatics, and he's been a diver, and he's I mean, I don't exactly know. I mean, if he's actually done. Yeah, I'm forgetting like too much of his backstory, but I think he's good at least basically being under the water and been doing all that thing. And then you got John Tracy, I think also himself, I think also has a background in like working on space stations. So that's the reason why he's always going between him and Alan Tracy on Thunderbird 5.
Okay.
So like all of them, the one thing that's great about any type of story is that you give a character his own purpose. In all of this, and then you basically garnish him with like different things, like Virgil, like with his creativity and so forth. So I think that's what makes the family dynamic, the character depth and the situation that they find themselves in. I think all of that comes together very well in Thunderbirds. I think that's what gives it its strength.
Yeah, and I think that another thing that gives it its strength is like that family bonding. Is that you have like this group of people who are essentially brothers, and they are working together to save people who are in danger, and they try to keep themselves secret. It's like, don't take pictures of us, and I don't want to be interviewed by this news report or anything like that. They want to be able to keep themselves secret so that they can be able to continue to save people all over the world.
Yeah. So let's anyway. We go into we have like our other characters as well, which I think are very important as well. Brains is very important of that, and the one thing I love about Brains is that he's not just some like Poindexter. He's not just like some like he's not the smart kid, is he? Like he is the he has like feelings about like some of the things that he works with. He has like he feels strongly about the morality of some things that he deals with, and he also like he also has he has feelings as well, and he has he also has a sense of like excitement himself, like in one of the rescues he wants to do it himself to make sure that everything's done right. So he's not afraid himself to basically get involved in the danger.
Yeah,
and like I probably imagine there was a lot of people like you were scared, like thinking, oh god, like he stumbled down the cliff and got crushed by a load of rocks, like they've written him out of the show. It's like nope, he's alive.
Yeah, and there was also one episode where he takes on a different alias named Mr. Hackenbacker so that he can be able to keep an eye on. I want to make sure that these planes right over here are able to implement my invention to see if it works properly.
Yeah, I love the fact that at one point, a couple of times, he forgets his own name and he's like, Mr. Hackenbacker is like, oh.
That's me. Yes.
That's me, Mr. Hackenbacker.
Yeah, and then there's some people who think that he's a little bit crazy, like in the one episode in which he's up on the radio tower where he's talking to his watch, and he's like, oh, this guy's going crazy. He's talking to his watch. It's like, yes, he's crazy because he's talking to his watch. In reality, he's talking to...
Yeah, not like today in 2025, no one talks to their watches in 2025.
Yeah, no, clearly not, because it's the year 2065. I mean, clearly nobody talks to their watches. I mean, what are you, crazy?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to, when we get to the point where it's kind of like Harvey Birdman. I think we're already there, where it's like, George Jetson's like saying, we're coming from the far distant future of the 2002, and then Harvey Birdman looks at it and says 2004. Oh my goodness. It's just hilarious. So you have Brains, and I think he's a fantastic character in this. And then you have the one thing I kind of got a bit disappointed with is that we don't get to see too much of Tintin. We get to see Tintin as part of International Rescue. We get to see Tintin and have cute moments with Alan, and we get to see Tintin in a couple of other places. But I mean she doesn't seem to get too much of her own individual. She doesn't seem to have her own individual adventure.
Well, the reason why is because Lady Penelope is the one who has them.
Exactly, yeah, but it would have been nice to say, okay, let's put Tintin in this situation and let's see what she can do.
Yeah, because she's kind of like
she seems to be portrayed as the medic of the group. So if any of them get injured, she knows what to do to help them out.
Yeah.
So because you remember they had to send her out to go find Scott because Scott was unconscious, and so they needed her to figure out what was wrong with them.
Yeah, and then also she was there in the episode where they were going over to space and they needed to prevent that spaceship from hitting the sun. So they needed her alongside them too. So again, they don't really... And I know that she was also alongside with Lady Penelope when they went over to France to keep an eye to make sure that, their stuff wasn't...
Yeah, but it's kind of she's kind of along for the ride, if anything, really. She doesn't have her own adventure, which I'm a bit disappointed because Lady Penelope gets her own adventure. Alan Tracy gets his own adventure. Various other members of
Brains gets his own adventure.
Brains gets his own adventure. All of them. Parker gets his own adventure.
Oh yeah, Parker's episode was actually really interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just kind of. I really wish that we could have one with Tintin, but I guess they get a chance to do that. I guess.
Yeah. So. Another thing I was actually disappointed with is that just when you were really getting interested in learning about where the Hood's origins came from, just when because throughout the entire series, International Rescue had no idea on why all these things were happening, because the Hood was always wearing disguises to prevent himself from being caught. And so in one of the last appearances that the Hood does appear in, that was when Scott was saying I think we may know who this mysterious person is who's trying to get our information from with our technology. And just when you thought about it, we never see him again.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, it would have been nice if we had, we got to some sort of climax with the Hood, and we didn't really get to that point, really. He just seems that he's just going to be like this, these, like those Saturday morning cartoons where it's the villain always gets away and we'll see him again, in a rerun episode. They just making sure that, he's never going to get caught or anything like that. It's not like Sonic Saturn where, Robotnik just disappears, into the ether.
Yeah, and there's actually a connection with the Hood with Kirano, because that's his half brother, and he even has a freaking statue of him so that he can be able to control him.
You know what? That's another thing as well. All this, they did not spare any expense with this show. The money is on the screen. All the techniques that they also did as well, and everything that they had. I mean, it was funny watching the documentary when they said they had a bit of regrets about leaving the lemon squeezer in the Thunderbird 1 docking bay. But I mean, it's funny because I looked at it and I thought, that's apart from a dryer. I thought they used something a bit more advanced than just like whatever they bought from Woolworths or whatever they bought from like Home Depot or whatever. Like it's I thought they would have used something that would have been a bit more technical, or probably like really was like really intricate parts of like a machinery. But no, it looks like they just use household items basically to put it all together. But it was done so well, and that's what's so great about it. So
yeah. I mean, they were able to manufacture various little everyday items into like the highest of technology in the future, and it made it very seamless. And I guess very similar to other Supermarionation programs in which it has a mixture between the puppets and the live action stuff, where you get to see close-up shots of like human hands being able to like go through files or making phone calls or pushing buttons. And I thought that was actually a really nice touch in which they were able to do that, because it makes it feel like it's alive, even though that you're watching mostly puppets for the most part. When you get to see those moments where you have like human hands being able to fiddle around with things or being able to activate things, it just makes it feel a little bit more organic.
Yeah, it does. And so again, this show, I mean, going to a personal, thing with this is that this show was part of my childhood. Like, I was 6 years old when I first watched this show. And the fact that, I got to, it's funny because I'm pretty sure that, some of my other family members also watched this as well. So to watch this again with them and to grow up with this, I thought was fantastic. And it's now spanned multi-generations at this point. And I'm pretty sure there's even kids today that are even growing up with Thunderbirds and thinking that this is a fantastic show. So I'm really glad that this is a British show that has come together. And funny enough, like there's even though when this is shown internationally, some people actually can't believe that actually this is a show actually made in Britain. A lot of people think that this is an American show, but it's not. It's a British show. It was made in Slough. Like it was. I just love that. So not only has it got like British appreciation, it's got also American appreciation as well, and also appreciation in Japan, around the world. And I'm really, that makes me feel very proud, about some of the culture that we've been able to bring over to say, hey, this is something that we took, and it looks very basic, but if you really put some creative minds behind it, like you can create something as phenomenal as Thunderbirds. I mean, I think that's has got a lot of creative juices going on along the place. I was saying, wow, if they could do that and they did it with like these techniques, imagine what we could do now in 2025 with stuff like this.
Yeah, I mean, especially since, they had like a small crew being able to put all this together, and, they had to like, every week they had to film something that was essentially almost an hour long. Like it originally was supposed to be like, okay, we're going to have like a 30-minute show, just like all the other ones. But Lou Grade, who at that point had purchased the company, was saying like, no, this isn't a TV show. This is a feature film. We need to make this longer. We need to be able to take advantage of all the stuff that we're able to put on the screen.
Which was annoying for them because they'd already created 9 episodes at that point, and then somehow they're going to have to make them bigger, which is like, oh wow, like in a way you can sort of see what they had to do, because they had to add extra scenes in, and they had to the only thing I would say, the critique I'd say about that is that once you start getting past the magistry of like that, because I grew up with Thunderbird, so I've seen it for multiple times throughout the decades. You start to see how slow the show actually is. This show is very slow.
Yeah,
it's sort of like wants you to kind of like, but mind you, the one thing it does is that if you're seeing this for the first time, you're still taking in the whole there's no uncanny valley, unless you like talking to the marionettes. Of course, there's going to be uncanny valley with that, but with regards to how incredible the Thunderbirds are and everything like that, like you're still when you're still trying to take that all in, a couple of 5 seconds feels like 1 second. It just feels like it also kind of goes a lot slower. It goes a lot quicker, I should say, because you're still trying to take in, everything that you're seeing on the screen.
Yeah, and
so I think that's how he gets around it. I think. Yeah, but then once you start, starting to become desensitized to it, then you start to feel like this is starting to kind of drag a little bit.
Yeah, and I think another thing that is able to help build up the slow burn to its advantage is that because the characters are in danger danger. It's like, okay, we have one moment in which that something is going to explode, or it's getting really, really hot and they're burning up and there's a lot of smoke, or it's going to be flooded and the water is going all the way up into their neck. It's like that progression of it, like starting off really slow and then things just escalate even more and more and more. It's like you're thinking, oh wow, what's going to happen next?
Like, when you see rocks falling from the sky, and when you see fire, and when you see these moments where like these characters are like balancing on something that could like give way at any moment, like it does make you feel very uncomfortable, because it's like, oh wow, imagine if that was me. And like, but then you forget, like, oh wait a second, this is a model, like on a set. Like, but you look at it and it's kind of like, wow, it actually feels very eerily real, because it's like, imagine being like on top of a tower that's like had something smashed into it, and then it's kind of like going along with the weather, and it's only just by the luck of fate that it doesn't fall down in time, whereby it doesn't fall down before international rescue come and save the day. Effectively, like it does make you feel very unwell, like when you're like seeing how precarious the situations are and what international rescue have to deal with to rescue the people out of it, stop them from dying.
Yeah.
So I think it's the fact it makes you feel that's something else.
Yeah,
there's not many shows that do that.
Yeah, and the reason why is because they don't just treat it as a parody or anything like that. They treated this very seriously.
Yeah, that's the again. We've probably talked about this quite a few times in this podcast, but where Gerry Anderson obviously didn't like the idea of like working with puppets to begin with, but so he had to up the ante in order to make this feel like where this could be as real as possible, and that drive got us to this point where Thunderbirds could basically be this type of show that could be taken seriously, even though it's a bunch of puppets and models.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
Yeah, and apparently that Thunderbirds was, the inspiration of it was based off of an actual disaster that happened where a bunch of miners were trapped in the cave after it caved in, and so you had this huge rescue that took several weeks for it to happen, and Gerry Anderson basically like saw it, and he's like, what would happen if you have this secret international team coming by and rescuing those people who, that it seemed like impossible for anybody else to save them.
Yeah. And I think let's go through some of the rescues that Thunderbirds did. And,
yeah.
Maybe the one that made me feel kind of like, oh my, those kids probably should have died was probably the one where the episode where, and you have to forgive me, I kind of blank out on the on the names of them, but
yeah, but I know exactly what you're talking about.
So there's one episode that is where these two kids accidentally call international rescue.
Cry
Wolf, and then they end up getting like the hood lobs a grenade at them, and they go flying into an abandoned mine shaft, and those kids should be dead. I'm sorry. I'm like when you see all the stuff collapsed on them, like it's just like, yeah, how they've all like survived and like not broken anything. Like you watch it, it's kind of like, oh wow, like that's a pretty terrible thing that's just happened to them, and then there's even more distressing when you find out that international rescue isn't going to be coming for them because they've done this, or they've faked this already by and now that's it. So it's and they must feel they feel very terrible when they find out, oh, it's actually a genuine call for help.
Yeah, in that episode, Cry Wolf, you have these two kids from Australia who call international rescue for help, and they are not in trouble actually. They're just playing international rescue, and so they even get a moment where they actually go over to the secret base and look around it itself. Literally just like, oh, we're just going to show you everything. We're going to tell you who we are. And you have to promise, don't call us ever again. And then when they're in real trouble and they call international rescue, they're like, what did we just tell you? Don't call us because we know that you're just playing a trick.
Yeah, and the one inconsistency in this show is that, they want to be like a massively secret organization that doesn't want anyone to know about them yet, but they're very happy for children to come along.
Yeah, this happened 2 more times, by the way.
I think it happened 3 more times, didn't it, actually? Because...
well, it happened with Cry Wolf, and then the other one was Security Hazard, a.k.a. the Clip Show episode.
Oh, the Clip Show show episode.
AKA the worst episode of the series.
Yeah. Actually, do you want to talk about that for a second?
Yeah,
like, you know, here's the thing about this. Like, there's one episode where it's just like they try. It's annoying because, like, the security hazard episode is basically just like a clip show, and they have Chip who climbs aboard Thunderbird 2, and that basically creates this entire havoc situation where, you know, they're all armed to the teeth, and you got Jeff Tracy saying, like, you know, we know you're in there, you know, come out, and you see there's like this poor little child, and good grief, Jeff Tracy just gives everyone such a dressing down with that, and he said, you better not tell him anything, but then through every member of the Tracy family, they all tell like their stories of like what they did in their Thunderbird machines, and but all it is just that they just basically go to the episode effectively and just show everybody what's happened in that, and that's just basically the episode effectively. Like the only one thing I probably would say that was hilarious in is that Jeff Tracy gets all worked up over it, but then somehow Chips manages to tell Jeff Tracy into like telling them like, you know, exactly everything that he does in that while he's smoking a cigar. I thought that was hilarious. I mean, that's the only hilarious moment in the episode. But even then, that's not enough to save it.
No, not at all. And here's the thing.
Here's the real thing about this episode as well, which is the kicker, which is the way that they explain all this away is that they put him in a bed because he's been awake for 24 hours, so he'll sleep like a log, which obviously, yeah, is true. And I should know because I've done long, journeys, through airports and, like, on planes and everything like that, and stayed up for, like, far too long than I should have done. But, anyway, I digress. So, Jim gets placed in a bed that then gets carefully placed into Thunderbird 2. They somehow quietly, I don't know how they do it, quietly go, as fast as possible as they can back to his house in Australia, and then slowly put him back into the bed and then away again, taking off, like, with a big, massive smoke and fire that, goes up into the air, somehow quietly doing that. And then, even then, his father comes in and Chip just wakes up and thinks it's all just a dream. I've got no words.
I have nothing.
I'm very sorry, but Security Hazard probably has to be the worst episode.
It is the worst episode. Now, I understand that clip show episodes back in that time period when television was fairly new was important because, reruns weren't really a thing. And especially for kids who probably heard about Thunderbirds from their classmates saying about like, oh, have you seen this show yet? I'm sure it would be kind of like a little bit of a hard pill to swallow if they would, not be familiar with it. And I'm sure they probably used it so that they can be able to like maybe introduce kids to Thunderbird so they can catch up with it and, they would be able to understand what's happening in the show. But, in the day and age in which we have streaming services and a lot of stuff is being released on DVD and Blu-ray and all that kind of stuff, clip show episodes aren't really used as much anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I think because like it's a trope in shows that, people realize like, oh, it's just like, it's probably one of the lowest rated episodes of any show.
Yeah.
I probably imagine because it's all it is just basically just, clips of like, it's just like a highlight reel, if anything. Like, you've already seen these episodes already, so why revisit them?
Yeah, the only reason why Legend of Korra had to do a clip show episode in the first place was because it was a conundrum. It was either, fire all the animators and writers because Nickelodeon was being Nickelodeon, or do a clip show episode. And they had to do a clip show episode because of that. And yeah, there's other examples of clip show episodes that, looking back on it is not as great compared to when it first came out. Our friend Jamboree even discussed about when The Simpsons did it, that, it was a good episode for its time, but it hasn't held up very well because it's just showing off things that we've already seen before. And yeah, it was a novelty at the time, but nowadays it just feels like it's pretty lazy.
Yeah. The other episode I don't particularly like is probably Give or Take a Million, which is supposed to be the Christmas episode of like, Thunderbirds.
And that's the last episode of the series.
Yeah, to be honest with everybody, this is like, this has to be, forget one of the worst Thunderbirds episodes. This is the worst Christmas special I think I've ever watched.
Really?
I think it is. Like, and maybe there's some really terrible Christmas episodes out there, but let me say this, it doesn't hold up to Arnold's Christmas. It doesn't hold up to like, all the other Christmas episodes that we've had, like, from other TV shows. I got to be honest with you, like, in regards to Christmas, if I was going to watch TV shows like the Christmas episodes, like on Christmas Day, I would probably give this one a miss.
Yeah. So essentially, that the whole reason why this this episode is not very good is because it feels very inconsequential to the organization. Like International Rescue, the only thing that they're doing in this episode is bringing in a kid into their hideout so that they can be able to have a special Christmas gathering and celebration with him. You're noticing a pattern, by the way, in which some of the worst episodes of Thunderbirds involves with kids.
Yeah, exactly, and I can sort of understand why these episodes exist because they want, they love the idea. I think they want, kids would love the idea to to go to Tracy Island, be part, to see International Rescue, up there. So they obviously want to fulfill that fantasy, with the viewer. But again, it just doesn't make any sense, we're in the context of what International Rescue is, and it just doesn't make it. And also with the Christmas episode as well, International Rescue don't really get involved in any of what's going on in there. If anything, the villains just basically set the alarm off and then get themselves into the rocket and then launch themselves into the children's hospital. But then the International Rescue doesn't do anything with that. You would have thought the one thing they would have done is that the villains would have gone into the rocket and then been launched in there, and then all of a sudden the rocket goes wrong, and then it's up to International Rescue to basically save the crooks and save the presents as well. You would have thought they would have been involved somehow in that, but they weren't.
No.
Nothing happens.
No, nothing happens. They literally got unconscious because when they were in the rocket, it just completely knocked them out.
International Rescue would have made the effort you would have thought was to save them. You would have thought.
No.
Hooray, they've saved the guys from, being obliterated by a rocket because, they could have, I don't know, I know exactly what they could have done. They could have put them in the rocket could have gone up, and because the rocket was too heavy with them in it, along with all the presents, it knocks it off, as well, and he's going to go crashing into the ground. And so, it's up to International Rescue to stop it from hitting the ground, and then to save them, and then obviously deliver the presents to the children's hospital. And then, International Rescue spends time with the children, and then one kid gets to go off to Tracy Island with in the Thunderbird. That should have been the episode, but it wasn't.
No.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just think it wasn't that great. Anyway, shall we focus on some of the episodes that we actually do like?
Yes, please, let's do so.
I like the first episode, which is Trapped in the Sky. The idea that here's the first big problem that International Rescue have to deal with. They've got the Fire Flash, which is trapped in the air. It can't land, and because there's a bomb on the wheels, and so it can't lower the wheels in order to basically get it onto the ground at London Airport. So what they have to do is that they have to get out one of their first bits of technology, which is to help the plane land on the ground. So they try and do it the first time, but one of the carts that they use to try and as the replacement wheels to get the thing on the ground, crashes into off the thing, so they have to get a replacement out, and then it really rends up the tension that goes on here, and then even then there's still a possibility that the rescue's going to go wrong, and so at one point Virgil's truck that he uses to get the plane onto the ground, it goes flying away from from that and crashes onto the side, and you think, oh god, what's happened to Virgil? And that's one thing that I really like about the first episode is that right off the bat it makes you care about what's going on, the situation that's in, and the characters who have to deal with the situation. The fact that it covers over it, and that's very hard for an initial episode to do. When you're doing an initial episode, when you're doing a debut episode of a show, you're looking to establish the characters and looking to establish the situation, and that in itself is pretty difficult to do. Within, but to be fair, they had 44 minutes to play with in order to do it. So obviously they had a lot more liberties. I think in other situations they would have been 2-part episodes of 22 minutes in order to establish what's going on.
Yeah, exactly.
So they would have, they would have been that. So to be fair, that's that. But for a first episode, that's not bad. That's a really great setup.
Yeah, and especially when you have one of the scenes in which when Virgil was trying to, have the plane not land on the ground, otherwise it was going to explode. And so you have these 3 cars that are going to be touching the front of the plane, and then the other ones to touch the wings, and then one of them just goes creaming away, and then you have the other two just like barely holding on, and then you have like the plane almost about to crash. And yeah, I mean, it builds up the tension really, really nicely. And I think that what a way to start things off, because I mean, it really gets you into what you're going to be seeing throughout the course of the series. You're going to be seeing all of these characters responding to danger and just barely getting by, so that people will be able to be saved from harm. And so yeah, I think it builds it off really well, and it's a great introductory episode.
Yeah, I think one of my other favorites episodes has to be City of Fire, which is like they've built like in a way it's kind of biblical, because like they've built this giant tower into the sky, and it's now, but the problem is that they've made it basically like a giant matchstick that basically can just be lit up and basically burn to the ground.
Yeah, so it's kind of like the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
For those who don't know, it was a giant tower that reached all the way up into the heavens, and God was not very happy with it, to the point in which all the people in the world were being punished by now speaking different languages, so they couldn't communicate with one another. And so they also did the same thing with Metropolis, the 1920s silent era film, in which they build like a giant tower where only the rich people lived above and lived in luxurious life, while the poor people worked underground and basically like kept everything afloat. And so yeah, in City of Fire, we essentially have this huge tower, like a tower that has everything that you can need in there. Like it has buildings with stores and restaurants. People live there. A huge parking spot that can park up to 10,000 cars.
Which kind of makes no sense, really, because if you've got everything that you ever need in a tower, why would you drive away?
I mean, to be fair, there were some people who were going there to visit there, but yeah, like for the people who live there, it's like you have everything you need. Unless you're going to be visiting family members, or you're going to be, going on a vacation or something like that. Like, why would you need to leave? An incompetent driver who just so happened to crash one of the cars in the parking lot, and yeah, it basically is like a matchstick. It completely like burned the entire
the car
building.
exploded, and it made all the other cars set on fire as well, and they all blew up. And like
and then you have
because
this
as we all know in Thunderbirds, everything blows up in dramatic fashion.
Yeah, everything goes boom.
Everything goes boom.
And so you have this family who was visiting so they can go to the monorail. Another thing with monorails, we'll get to that later, but
I don't know what it was with monorails. I think like it was it's I guess we're a long way from like Lyle Landley selling monorails to Springfield, I think, at that point.
Yeah, but apparently in the Thunderbirds universe, like the subway system is old fashioned and completely abandoned, and so we're using monorail so we can be able to travel anyway. But yeah, they have this family who wanted to go to the monorail, but unfortunately they're trapped in there because they're trying to prevent the fires from spreading, and so they're just trapped in the smoke. And so you have not only the fire happening in the building and is about to collapse, but then you also have these this husband, wife, and this son trapped in there and are unable to escape, and so they have to basically like rescue them. So yeah, a lot of things are happening in this one.
Yeah, exactly, and that's but this is the episode where actually I saw quite a lot as a child because we had it on video. So so City of Fire kind of like had to be kind of my go-to, kind of like Thunderbirds episode in a way.
Yeah, and also this was the episode in which when Scott and Virgil were testing out a new laser to cut open so that they can be able to go through.
But that ratchets up the tension as well, because you see them testing it and to try and cut open a piece of metal, but then they all faint because obviously the gas goes through their skin and causes them to pass out. So they you're seeing them using that there because they've only got a certain amount of time before the whole basement collapses, from all the way to the rubble. And the one thing that is great about this is that you got the victims that are in the basement, and this whole massive inferno is going on above them, and then the tower collapses, and then you realize, well, good grief, what are they going to do now? Because this giant behemoth tower is now a big massive flaming rubble above these poor people, so they have to blast their way through in order to get through there, and that causes some tension as well, because you have no idea you know how unpredictable all this rubble and fire is, and then you've only got a certain amount of time for the mole to get under there to go get the people, and so what are you going to do? You can't use the laser beams to get through the steel doors.
Yeah.
You're going to have to use the gas, but then you already know what happens when you use the gas, so they use it to and hope for the best, and thank God, they all get out, and that's where you're at, you're praying for these poor people to to make it out in time and everything. It's such a suspenseful episode, back when you were watching it.
Yeah.
And so I love the explanation at the end. It's well, how is it that the gas didn't make us pass out when we rescue those people? And Brain says, oh, well, hang on a second. We never tested the gas when it was in under high heat. So the gas was burning off as you were using it. And so I thought, well, that was a pretty clever way to explain why they never passed out when they used the gas. Mm-hmm. So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah. And
it's my favorite episode.
Yeah. And this would also be a very important episode, too, because later on, when they realized that the laser that were trying to cut open through the door was going so slow, and so they had a follow-up episode, well, sort of a follow-up episode called Vault of Death, in which they were able to build a new laser so that it could be able to cut the door faster, especially where you have a person who is working at the bank trapped in the vault, and you have this is the episode in which when Parker was trying to prevent Lady Penelope and the guy who worked at the bank to going into London.
I love that episode where it's just Parker at first, it takes him 2 hours and 30 minutes to basically get into the old vault, and then they replace it with the new vault, and all that Parker basically does is just grab a hairpin from Lady Penelope and just fills around with the lock and gets it open.
Yeah, this was the episode that it got us more introduced to Parker, and this is essentially where he became one of our favorite characters, because it's
hey, nosy.
All right, so yeah, let's talk about some other episodes. One of my favorites was Terror in New York City, where the fact that you have them saying, oh, we're going to move the Empire State Building somewhere else, which, by the way, this actually did happen before in the 1930s, where they were able to move the Victoria Building, turn it in a 90-degree angle while they still had the workers in there, and they didn't even feel a thing. So this does exist, but yeah, apparently in the year 2065, they couldn't do it because the entire empire just crumbled to the ground, and then you have these cocky news reporters coming in, and they get trapped in there too. And then I think
it's how old's the Empire State Building at this point? It's 2065.
Oh God, it's almost over 100 years old.
Yeah, exactly. So that's interesting, really. Do we really? I might be wrong about this, but you've got the Empire State Building, which at one point was the tallest tower in in all of New York City, and now it's it's 100 and something years old, and you're trying to move it. And it all just crumbles. It's a weak batter, but I think the way explanation they gave is the floor underneath it was just so weak that it couldn't contain that, because there actually are rivers under New York City, aren't they?
Yes.
So I guess that's the explanation that they gave. There was a river that was underneath it and it's been going for all this time, and then all of a sudden, that's interesting, because I remember hearing a news report about how New York is actually sinking into the ground because it's just so heavy, underneath it. So I think maybe it might be playing into that. Maybe that's one of the reasons why they decided to do that episode. Say that hey, underneath, New York seems fine above ground, but underground is not so great. And even when you try to move the New York State Building, New York Empire State Building, it just crumbles.
Yeah, so. And one of the reasons why I love this episode so much is because, again, you have that tension that's building up where, in a normal situation, the people who were under the Empire State Building, of course they wouldn't have survived, but they were able to anyway. But it's that's just one thing. But now another thing is that because of the rivers, it's starting to flow up, and now they're starting to almost to be the point of drowning. And in an earlier on in the episode, Thunderbird 2 gets completely destroyed. And so you would think that, okay, well, they just fly Thunderbird 2 so that Thunderbird 4 can be able to rescue them. But no, it takes a lot longer. So they actually have to use the ship that almost damaged Thunderbird 2 to destruction in the first place so that they can be able to cross Thunderbird 4. And it took an entire day for that to happen. Meanwhile, you have these people sitting under the Empire State Building's wreckage, almost to the point of drowning, and you're thinking oh wow, it's slowly up into the point in which that they're going to be drowning soon. It's is Thunderbird 4 going to make it in time? What's going to happen? And so yeah, it really builds up into a really great climax where you get to see Thunderbird 4 into action, which doesn't happen very often, sadly.
Yeah, so I think but don't get me wrong, like Thunderbird 4 does get its episodes.
It does,
in
yes.
this. Yeah, and I mean, like I think because they still had the techniques from Stingray at the time, so I think for them, I think it would have been criminal, I think, not to give Thunderbird 4 like his due, because obviously they've had the techniques done hadn't down since their previous Marionation creation.
All right, then.
So yeah. But. Yeah, so I think that's Thunderbirds for us, I think. So.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that overall, I have to say that I really did enjoy watching this program.
I adore this Thunderbirds, and I'll watch it again and again. Like it's just it gives me such warm memories of my childhood. We're watching all the takeoff sequences. Just all the characters interacting with one another, and it makes me want to see more. And but who knows? Maybe in the future. We with who knows in the future we might actually get more Thunderbirds somewhere down the line.
Yeah.
And but I mean obviously we got the newer incarnations of Thunderbirds, but I mean I think when you say Thunderbirds, I think we'll always refer to the Supermarionation version rather than any of the other versions, not the anime, not the CGI version. I think when you say Thunderbirds, I think everybody knows what knows what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. So. And the fact that Thunderbirds was able to come back in a big way when you had Thunderbirds F.A.B, which was the stage show around the 80s, where it was a bunch of Thunderbirds fans who decided, hey, we like this thing that we grew up with as kids. I mean, do people feel the same way? Would they even get the reference of it? And it became a hit. And so you have a lot of Thunderbirds fans who started watching the stage show, and then eventually you have the episodes compiled into like little vignettes of films that people were able to tune into. And then around the 90s, that was when they started doing the reruns again. And then a new generation of fans started getting into the series. And then the toys came out and the VHS tapes came out. And that's when eventually, the Thunderbirds just got a new audience again. It almost reminded me of if you remember when Avatar The Last Airbender came out on Netflix, and then a new generation of fans just, loved it so much. And then, we have Avatar concerts. We have the live action Netflix series. We have the movies coming out in theaters and, all that kind of stuff. It kind of almost reminds me of that, in which like you have a show that was beloved for a generation of people. And then, after decades later, that's when they started rerunning it. And, because of the characters, because of the action, because of the presentation, because of all of those things that a lot of people can be able to really generate towards, that it became a huge hit again. And I can see why.
Yeah, exactly. So, I just, as in closing, like, I'm just really glad that, this was part of my childhood, because it was such a phenomenal show, and it was so inspiring as well, for all the things that came out afterwards. And I think this obviously, is not this is the thing. I think this was when 2021 Studios, I think, was probably at its peak. But to be fair, there is another show that's going to be coming up that we're going to talk about, in our next episode. So stay tuned for thank you very much for letting us take you through International Rescue and Thunderbirds. And the next episode we're going to talk about is Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons.
All right. Until then, everyone, we will catch you later.